Story 1. Am I the a-hole for showing everybody what my ex wrote on his final check to me? I, 51 female, divorced my ex-husband, 53 male, 7 years ago. We were married for 14 years and had 3 kids together. 24 male, 22 female, 18 female. I was a stay-at-home mother, and I suffered from constipation that, while doctors say isn't definitely IBS, has made me suffer from joint and back pain when I eat things like dairy or any of my other food sensitivities. We live in New Jersey, and the judge made it so that child support and alimony would both end at the same time. I had a lot of issues in my marriage, but at the very least, I have 3 great kids that I love and who love me. My ex has been very bitter, saying I should have wanted counseling even though I was completely neurotypical and it was him suffering from depression. He also discredited my want to divorce by saying I was acting out of emotion and asked me to take a step back and think, as if I haven't been thinking before. He was always working 12-hour days and overtime, and I was the one taking care of and giving the kids what they needed. My son now has graduated college and is a genius. He has his own app development company and makes more than my ex and I could ever dream of making in a year. My 22-year-old daughter has a degree in nursing and is getting married, and her fiance comes from money, so she's set as well. However, as for me, I've been suffering from menopause and backaches, and a lot of the entry-level jobs that would hire me would leave me in pain and exhausted. That hasn't stopped my ex from griping and dismissing my real pains. Long story short, he sent me my last child support and alimony check. In the memo of the alimony check, he wrote, "Freedom." Good luck then. It was such a mockery to the health issues I've suffered and all I've put into this family. I've showed my friends, and they agreed he's still a blunt, daft individual. My 18-year-old was there, and she said she couldn't believe he thought that way of her. Then my older kids found out through screenshots, and because of my health issues, my son has been sending me $3,000 a month, while my ex sends me $2,500 plus what's needed for our youngest daughter. He's spent a lot of his childhood with unmarried parents and resents the fact that my ex proposed to his girlfriend, 48 female, after only 2 years. He called his dad a mongrel and said he and my 22-year-old would always help me out. He had been saying he would just make up what I'd lose from my ex because he could afford $5,500. But he told me my ex had been telling him to save his money and only send me under $2,000. My ex is now backtracking and saying he only wrote it on my check, but the kids are not amused. He invited them to his wedding, but my 22-year-old said she might be better off just focusing on her own wedding and that she'd help me out too if I needed it. Am I the a-hole for blasting him when he clearly wrote it to be seen? He's always painted me as the greedy ex, it seems. Well, I don't know if it's for all to see. I mean, this check is not something that everyone's going to see, is it? You're not showing all your checks to everybody, are you? Kinda the a-hole? I can imagine that you're ticked. Maybe show it, maybe it's something you can share with your family as it's a family thing. But that's about it. If you're showing it to friends, that's kind of, that's kind of a little outside of things. Kind of, but I'm glad you're being taken care of. Story 2. If I can't drink here, neither will my friends. Back in my mid-20s, I used to wait tables at this restaurant in my hometown. The money was good, and I got along well with everyone there. Usually, after our shift, a few of the servers would sit at the bar and have a few drinks to wind down. You figure, why go to another bar when there's a bar right there? We always tipped well, and nothing was ever an issue. Until one day, when the owner, out of nowhere, decided that employees weren't allowed to drink at the bar anymore. Now, I completely understand that this is a normal rule in other bars, and the owner was well within his rights, but I just didn't see where this came from. I asked the manager if we did anything wrong to warrant the rule change. He said the owner was just being a male member. He told me he tried to talk him out of it because there was no reason, but the owner just wanted to make his presence known. Okay, he's well within his right to. However, what he didn't count on was Thursday nights and my friends. Back then, my friends were in a punk band and had practiced every Thursday night. I would work every Thursday night, and they would meet up with me at my bar and grab a drink with me after my shift. And usually, they bring their girlfriends, friends, and whoever was hanging around. My friends pretty much made the bars Thursday night as busy as Friday and Saturday. And when I tell you we could drink, we could drink. And of course, everyone tipped generously. So when I was told I wasn't allowed to drink at my bar anymore after my shift, they were as ticked as I was. My buddy Bob was like, wait, so there's no point to go to your bar and then for all of us to go to another bar after you're done, so you can join us. We might as well just go to another bar and you can meet up with us after. It was the most logical solution. There was another bar around the corner. So, Thursday night around 9 p.m., I'm finishing up my shift as my manager approaches me. He looks at the empty bar and asks, "Hey man, are your friends on their way? They're usually 3 drinks in by now." I reply, "Oh, actually they're 4 drinks in." They're at the bar around the corner. My manager is dumbfounded. "Wait, what? Why aren't they drinking here?" I calmly tell him, "Well, they want to drink with me, and I'm not allowed to drink here. Now, if you'll excuse me, there's a pint of Canehead High, my favorite beer, waiting for me around the corner." I walked out and joined my friends for a fun night. Now, I must admit I feel bad for the bartender who usually works Thursday nights. She had no part in the decision, and her tips suffered because of our move. But that's on management, not me. After a few weeks, the owner noticed the dip in sales on Thursday nights, and we were allowed to drink at our bar again. However, the damage was done. We found out that not only did the bar around the corner have all the beers we usually drink, they were much cheaper. We also struck up a great friendship with the bartenders. We found our new hangout spot. There was no reason to go back. Oh well. Yep. It says at the beginning, the owner wanted to make his presence known. Show up at the bar. Show up at the business you own. Put in some work. Look at everything around. Observe that this person was bringing in their friends from Thursday night, and maybe it would have given you the idea to not implement this rule. That's probably how you make your presence known, by treating the employees like people. Radical thought, I know. Story 3. My brother left his son with me and blocked me. I don't have legal guardianship to start enrolling him in school. What do I do? For context, my mom and I have been helping my brother with raising his son for years. Nephew's mom left him when he was a baby. My brother left his son with my mom and I again after he was arrested. He's been released from jail, but has now ceased all form of contact with us. He was supposed to draw up a POA so we could enroll my nephew in school. He never did, despite giving him months to prepare. What do I have to do to get my nephew in school? I don't have my brother's address, and again, he's blocked my family's phone number and from social media. I have no way of contacting him. I would even fly out to wherever he is to pick up the POA. And I've already tried to file a petition for temporary guardianship, but we would have to serve the parents. Because I don't know where either of them live, I'd have to hire a company to find them and then serve them the papers. I know I'll need to seek legal advice from an attorney, but is there anything else I can do in the meantime? Please help me. I just want to provide the best life for my nephew. Any advice or resources will be greatly appreciated. I don't know where you are. I'm not a lawyer. I would hope someone can give you some comments, and I'm glad that you are doing everything you can to provide for this person, because it just sounds like the brother is just completely checked out. I mean, why did he? I don't know the story behind that, and there just definitely needs to be a follow-up on this if you've gotten any advice and what you did. Story 4. Don't want to pay me for shoveling your snow? We'll have some more. I live in New Jersey, and we just had a snowstorm, so I thought I could make some quick cash by shoveling driveways. So I start off and do a couple of houses and make about $80. Pretty good money for me. So I go to this house, and this lady says that she'll give me $50 for shoveling her driveway and sidewalk, so I start and finish about 20 minutes later. I go up to the door and knock, but she won't open. So I go to the back door and knock. She still doesn't open. Then I see her looking at me through the window, but she quickly turns away and pretends like nothing happened. At this point, I realize that I just got tricked into doing a big ton of work, and I'm not getting paid. I start to walk home all ticked off, and then remember that my friend who lived down the street has one of those machines that clear snow. Let the revenge begin. I borrow it from him and run down to her house. I turn it on and blast that snow that I shoveled and some more all over her yard. Then she rushes outside and starts yelling at me, but I return the machine to my friend's house and go home. Yeah, that's what you get. It's not like I hope this person is not pulling these kind of scams on other people and just walking away. I mean, that's awful. This is a neighbor. This is someone that you're living close to. I mean, it would be wrong even if it wasn't, but you need to expect some kind of response to your actions, and you're facing the consequences right now. Should have paid the money. Now it's probably going to cost you more to get it actually cleared, or more of your time.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 5. Am I the a-hole for enforcing a no kids talk rule and not offering to plan a baby shower? Our friend group, female 30s, gets together about once a month. A few years ago, certain group members began trying to conceive. One of the first ones to start trying was Katie. Unfortunately, Katie and her husband had difficulty conceiving. This was understandably very difficult for them. Once other members of the group started having kids, Katie asked us to not talk about kids at our monthly get-togethers because it was difficult for her to hear. She also made it clear that she would not attend any baby showers. The rest of the group had mixed feelings about this. We understood that Katie was very upset about her difficulties conceiving, but it was disappointing to not be able to share important parts of our lives. We generally go around and everyone talks about what's new in their lives: work, promotions, hobbies, etc. But whenever one of us was on maternity leave, we could basically only say everything is good because we couldn't talk about the main thing happening in our life. That said, now that our kids are older and we're all back to work or have time for hobbies, we have started to enjoy having dedicated time for no kids talk. It's something that we've even come to look forward to. Fast forward to now, and Katie and her husband are pregnant, which is very exciting. She's nearing her due date and planning to take at least a year off to stay home with the baby. That's enough background, so now to the point. Last night, me and 2 other members of our group got a text from Katie's husband saying that she's really upset that we barely ask her about her pregnancy when we see her, and that no one has offered to throw her a baby shower. At first, we were surprised to hear this. We do text Katie at least weekly to check in on her. We just don't talk about it at our monthly hangouts. She's been talking about it in her updates, but no one has asked any follow-ups about the pregnancy, and we focus more on our other updates. We talk to the rest of the group, except for Katie, And the general vibe is that we want to keep the no kid talk rule in place, and it feels a little rude that Katie expects us to when she's the one who made the rule in the first place. Would we be the a-holes if we keep our traditions? We also don't feel like we have time to plan a shower with the holidays happening. It sounds like no one wants to go through the stress of planning a shower when Katie didn't even go to theirs. She's reaping what she sows in more ways than one. She's having a kid, but she started this, and this is something that everyone has looked forward to. And it's something that she's wanting to be broken for some reason. Well, because it's happening to her. She's finally getting pregnant. She kind of feels like she's out of step with people. But kind of not the a-hole for looking forward to this rule that everyone now agrees upon. And she was also not attending the showers. She should have had some sort of communicate. You have some sort of communication outside of this. It's just not within your get-togethers. They're not completely shutting out talk of kids with her. So, no, not the a-hole. And the holidays are coming up, and during the holidays you want to shower? My birthday is right next to the holidays, and almost no one likes to plan for anything like that. So, yeah, I can understand the timing, but I can understand that other people have their own stuff. Story 6. Bridezilla Karen ends up looking like a pauper at her own wedding. I, female 48, have known Pat, female 48, for decades. As far as I can remember, she was fixated on having 5 children and a picket fence dream life. I slowly cut ties with her in college because she was an opportunist and I didn't trust her. She is both manipulative and forceful. Her idea of cute rubs me the wrong way. Pat likes to walk like a penguin when she wants to elicit pity, and she usually does this when she wants to evoke the underdog narrative. I've never seen someone act so despicable and ridiculous at the same time. I moved on with my life. Happily got rid of her for years. Pat eventually found me on Facebook. I accepted her friend request out of politeness. Pat has become the epitome of a permissive mother. Her 5 kids do as they please, and she never calls them out. She tried to force a relationship between me and her daughters and made them call me auntie. Pat tried to drop them at my house uninvited. Her phone calls were insistent. She tried to monopolize my time, and she began to show up at my job. I created some boundaries, so she tried to find loopholes. It was a nightmare. My husband and I hosted a party for the community center. Not the real name, new members. The community center is actually a very informal initiative, and my husband and I mainly serve the homeless population. We prefer to help strangers instead of catering to potentially narcissistic acquaintances. We don't mind lending a hand, but we've encountered truly dishonest choosing beggars. There are other services, like the ones of the members who helps women get their wedding and prom dresses for free. The community center location headquarters is actually a farm owned by an elderly couple. There's a barn, a venue, and a very nice green field with an artificial lake and some fowl. They charge for the use of their facilities, weddings, etc., but not for community-oriented stuff. Pat had always been salty at her husband for demanding that she go back to work after baby number 3. In the meantime, he worked 3 jobs. She demanded he get her pregnant to fulfill her dream of having 5 kids. He didn't agree because he was already nearly 45 and felt like he might never be able to retire. She got away with bringing new babies into this world anyway. Her fascination with being pregnant comes from all the attention she gets. She had at least 1 miscarriage in between each kid. Pat latched onto our group. She never missed any of our activities. I hated having her in my house. but it was an open invitation that included virtually everyone, and she was very active as an event organizer. I didn't like the way her kids behaved. We had a designated area for parties and entertainment, but her kids ended up inside my bedroom. We ended up having to keep watch of them and enjoyed zero of our own party. I called her days later to get my point across regarding their overall behavior, but she completely cut me off and began talking about herself and said her kids wanted to come visit again and use our pool. I never answered that. I didn't want to say, "No, I will not have your brats over." She also called me as summer was approaching specifically to let me know her middle daughter was bored and wanted to spend a week at our home. I politely declined, citing that me and my husband have to work and can't entertain guests. Pat paid no heed. Her kid called me on the weekend, called me auntie, and attempted to coax me by saying, "Mom said you invited me over to spend summer with you." I quickly clarified and offered an explanation to avoid hurting a kid's self-esteem. Never mind. Her daughter just hung up on me. Pat's Facebook also showed some red flags. Some cryptic rants here and there were visible, along with friends' comments and complaints on how she asked a particular person to watch over her kids only for a couple of hours and ended up leaving them all day. Another of her friends criticized her girls' night out because Pat had just asked them to be patient and wait until she could pay back some money that she owed them. Yet she had money to spend on Friday night outings. I thought those very public comments on private matters were more like a cry of lost patience. Unpleasant things began to happen, like the time she volunteered to wrap the Christmas presents for underprivileged kids. We all wanted to create a mix of less costly gifts with really nice ones. Surprisingly, some nice and eye-catching toys and games went missing but turned up under her Christmas tree, courtesy of her mother-in-law's Facebook posts. No one could prove anything, but it was hate-inducing. Or the time my daughter called me in tears to pick her up after she attended Pat's daughter's birthday, Casey. My daughter had been ignored all night because she didn't give her the expensive gaming stuff Casey practically demanded. My daughter did ask, but I said no. We would buy her a very nice and thoughtful present according to her taste. So when I went to pick up my daughter, she was sitting alone in the living room while Casey and her friends stayed outside. Stories about Pat and her family multiplied. The owners at the farm community center decided to keep their gates locked unless they had guests or events because Pat got in the habit of driving in whenever she pleased, and it was either her kids screaming and disturbing ongoing weddings, throwing rocks at the koi in the lake, or harassing the geese in the yard. Or how she stiffed another soccer mom with a lunch bill and then pulled the struggling financial card. Or how other parents hated her because she created unnecessarily hostile competition. When my daughter turned 13, I allowed her to wear my grandma's ring. It's not an expensive piece of jewelry, but it's vintage, and girls nowadays want to look boho. My granny gave it to me when I was a teenager, so I passed it on to my kid so she could wear it on her birth week. It was weird that she became quiet and distracted after that. She also didn't want to go to school, and my husband and I became suspicious. She never opened up, and my other kids had no clue. We went to her school, but her teachers assured us nothing had changed in her environment. My husband and I suspected she was being bullied, but our kid gave us no tools to support her. My kid is very sunny and very compassionate. She has never had any problems with other kids. I called her best friend's mom, Natalie, my kid's BFF, told us what was going on. Casey, Pat's eldest, and my daughter had become close. I knew this and wasn't too thrilled. I found the age, Casey was 17. Gap not exactly inappropriate, but I knew that I'd rather see my daughter spend time with friends in the same age range. Casey is very beautiful and a gifted student. She's also very conceited. To make this story short, she asked my daughter if she could try on the ring and refused to give it back. She later claimed that that she lost it, but would look for it. So my daughter was distraught. My daughter kept asking for her ring, and as a result, Casey shunned her and spread the word that my kid was trying to steal her ring. Some kids at school took Casey's side. So now Casey just wore my kid's jewelry to school like nothing happened. If that doesn't qualify as taunting, I don't know what does. My guilt comes from not being able to get my daughter to open up and feel safe telling me the truth. I talked to her, and she burst into tears. I was both pained as a mother and furious that some teenage shrew was doing this under our noses. I went straight to Pat's car after school. I asked to talk to Casey, and as Casey was about to go in. So I grabbed Casey's hand and asked to see her jewelry. Casey froze, and she tried to make a fist, so I became relentless. Casey yelled, "Mom!" and Pat struggled to get out of the car. I slid the ring off. Casey has tiny hands and wore the ring on her index finger. First, Pat yelled at me. After I confronted her with the engraving on the band, my grandmother's maiden name, she argued it was loaned to her daughter by my kid. Then she said she bought it. I paid no heed. I did warn them that I knew Casey had become an abusive friend to my daughter. Pat called me to tell me off. She said she was trying to raise an assertive young woman, and I had just messed that up by being overbearing. She never apologized for her child thief. Pat's husband, Hank, is what can be described as a doormat. Pat wore him down to a knob. He had no choice but to obey her to keep the peace. She was a bully who actively withdrew affection when he didn't follow her wishes, even in public. She got kids number 4 and number 5 after a relentless campaign that included leaving him for 2 months. Her pregnancies were a nuisance because she expected to be treated like the only lady who has ever gotten pregnant. She strolled around in a wheelchair almost immediately after getting pregnant, and she would get very sick on weekends, so her kids were often sent to friends and family so that she could rest. Pat systematically bullied Hank. She would leave town and take the kids with her. Poor Hank would look distraught, drinking on his porch and just looking really lonely. This is how she got off the hook and was able to leave her job. Hank had virtually no voice, so he struggled to keep the marriage together. Everyone liked him, but hated her equally. Hank loved to talk to other people, but seemed concerned that Pat would be upset. Over time, according to my husband, Hank began to show signs of depression and mental distress. Our friend Lena runs the wedding/prom dress initiative. It's not complicated. Dresses are sourced from donations, eBay, trunk shows, etc. Unusually beautiful dresses are retained so that more than one bride gets to wear them. In some cases, a bride will pay $50, but most of the time the dresses are donated to the bride. Pat was involved with this. Lena kept her in because they never had any issues, and her task was limited to just shipping the dresses out. Pat decided to renew her vows, and her bridezilla, Karenzilla attitude became the icing on the cake. For starters, she bullied another couple into giving up their wedding date at the farm because she needed her renewal to match her exact wedding date. They were not impressed with her harassment, so they booked another venue. As a result, the farm owners were ticked because Pat was already costing them money after she had successfully negotiated a cut in their rate because she couldn't afford it, but will repay by doing maintenance work around the venue. She never made good on her word. Pat became attached to a particular dress that was already assigned to another bride. Lena made it clear that she would need to pay for her own dress, so Pat played it cool and shipped the wrong gown instead. She was adamant that it was the right dress, despite all the notes on Lena's agenda. The other bride was truly gracious about it. She was obviously disappointed, but never made a scene. What bothered me most is that I picked the dress and bought it for $40 at a garage sale. Not my money, Lena's money. It was a vintage dress, ankle length, with lots of lace and white with a bargain. It was a huge bargain. Again, when confronted, Pat did a Casey and used the "this is mine" strategy. We felt so bad for the other bride that we did our best to get her something nice to wear. The other bride was a true fighter, but she had pulled out of welfare, earned her high school diploma, and was working on getting on her feet by trying to earn a certificate as an acrylic nail technician. So her reward was to have some Karen steal her dress? Pat never admitted to messing up, but just by the fact that she claimed it was her dress, we knew. Lena never allowed her in her warehouse again. Their last phone fight ended with Pat bringing up the other bride's past like it mattered, and "this conversation is over. It's my dress and you're mistaken." This was weeks before the other bride's wedding. Pat went all out on her wedding decor. She spent way too much. She hired a caterer for some food, mainly mimosas and appetizers, but the wedding invitation included a request for specific dishes for her Sunday brunch wedding. Either she ran out of banquet money or was on a complete moocher mode. I picture the Penguin walking upon practically everyone asking to supply her wedding reception grub, and I cringe. There's nothing wrong with potluck weddings. In fact, they can be a nice addition to a very cozy and family-oriented wedding reception. But don't you need to at least be close to your guests in order to ask for such a thing? Even I got an invitation, and I told everyone I wasn't going because I was very uncomfortable being told what to bring and was probably expected to give them a cash gift on top of that. Some of the older ladies in our group agreed. Some said they would not decline in advance because she's a bully and they didn't want a confrontation. Lena called me the night before Pat's re-wedding. Lena was there to close the Saturday night bingo, and Pat was awfully friendly, but that's what she does whenever things are going her way. Lena peeked into the garment bag and saw the exact same dress while Pat was caught up supervising the wedding decoration. The thing with Karens is that they expect everyone to suck it up or make their dreams come true, or they simply underestimate everyone and think we're all fools. Lena is a very straightforward person with a "so sue me" attitude. She told me she would just ruin the dress. After all, it was hers, so she could do whatever she wanted. If Pat wanted to take legal action, and should things get ugly, she needed to provide ownership. However, the dress was the same. The marks inside the hem and the tags were the same. Even the tag numbers that were punched to identify each dress for logistics purposes matched. Pat had the dress altered with some extra beading and dyed to a deep cream color. But it was obviously the same garment. Lena and I snuck in before the venue was closed for the night. All brides were allowed to stay in a small bedroom for a small charge, so that they don't need to drive in on their wedding day. Honestly, the makeshift chapel was gorgeous. I don't know how she paid for it, but it was full of flowers and presumptuous details. I naively brought in some ink to spill on the dress, but Lena said she wanted something more awful, like a nasty surprise. Ink would be too obvious, and if she saw it ahead of time, she may be able to snag another gown from somewhere. No. The ideal thing was to have her trust the dress was fine. So Lena locked herself in a bathroom stall and completely cut out the back panel. She patiently put it back on its hanger and zipped the bag. We left through the emergency door with the back of the dress stuffed inside Lena's purse. I completely hate people who target and steal from anyone they, Pat and her kid, calculate to be in a weaker position. The wedding was scheduled at 9 a.m. Pat called me at 7 a.m., but I ignored her calls. I picked up by 8 a.m., both curious and wondering if she suspected anything. Pat was frantic. She was crying that her dress was missing by half. I purposefully made her explain, being annoyingly dense and continually interrupting like she does, and stalling the conversation. She asked me if I could lend her my wedding dress. I said no, sorry. She then asked me if I would help her get a dress. I was satisfied to remind her that the town's bridal shops were closed on Sunday, and the others that were open were almost an hour away. The farm is already almost 1 hour away from town. If Pat could get a shop to rent a dress, she would need to try that dress on and get it steamed. Even if the dress was ready to wear, it would easily take more than 2 hours round trip. She tried to ask me to go pick out a dress. Who would pay for this? Even if a shop were open and brought her a dress, it would add to the cost. Also, these shops open at 10 or 9:30 at the earliest. By the time they got to her, it would be time to wrap up the wedding because she needed to clear the venue by 12 for the next event. She broke down and mumbled some stupid stuff I don't understand. So Pat hung up on me and called Lena instead. She asked Lena to bring her anything she had available. Lena and I ended up delivering the most outdated, moss-smelling, oversized dress. Pat's disappointment was a mixture of anger and emotional. She also tried to wear her knee-length silk bridal slip as a wedding dress, but it was too obvious and it really looked cheap. She tried to get her daughter to give her her own dress to wear with an open-back zipper due to fitting issues, but Casey refused, asking if she was supposed to attend the wedding naked. She got a point, plus Casey is petite. The dress needed a petticoat to plump up the skirt, which wasn't available. So it dragged all over the floor, and Pat had to keep pulling it up. Pat walked down the aisle with one hand on her bouquet and another one grabbing her dress. The dress looked limp and weird with the arrangements of pins, they didn't show, that caused the sleeves and neckline to pucker into messy rims. She spent the ceremony looking uncomfortable and out of place. Very few people attended, but that was not part of the revenge. That was just how people reacted to her entitled attitude. The dress looked awful. The reception portion of the wedding had all this princely decoration and a very nice cake and a bridezilla with a dress from hell. I didn't stay, but I was told she was so disappointed she spent her wedding sulking. There was no dance, no actual speech. She had to change into a shirt and leggings because the dress was too uncomfortable. Everyone talked about how Pat put on her flip-flops and walked around aimlessly until she ordered the ushers to start folding up the chairs within 1 hour of the reception. So she practically kicked everyone out, and the cake was never cut. Pat wasn't the same after this. She was not as loud and avoided everyone. I think she was disappointed that nobody ran to her rescue, not even her family who came from out of town. Her husband finally cracked under all the pressure and sought some help. He was slaving away and coming home to clean the house while Pat used her kids as an excuse to spend like crazy. Hank also had to do kid homework because Pat never had time or never had patience. She also refused to get a part-time job so her kids could attend an after-school and get help with their school stuff. Therapy seemed to help Hank because the last time Pat left with her kids, he didn't seem distraught. He would be riding his bicycle and could be seen more relaxed while mowing his lawn. Hank told my husband that he had contemplated self-unaliving after their third kid. When Pat returned, he maintained the routine but was interested in going out by himself and doing things for himself. We began to see Pat alone all the time. Hank was seen less and less in the same car and eventually moved in with his parents. He filed for divorce on the grounds of emotional cruelty, and I don't think he won. Instead, I'm not sure of this because this is what I was told, there was some sort of settlement or agreement that she would not get close or interact with him unless it had to do with the kids. I also don't know if Pat ever actually suspected who or what happened to her dress. She slowly pulled away from the community center and became less active in social gatherings. Pat also removed me from her Facebook as well as mostly everyone else from school and the center. Has anyone ever seen, has anyone ever seen the movie Norbit? It sounds like that woman, the woman that just was such a bully and just charged through the town and just ran everything and was able to manipulate everyone. You read the story and you're wondering, how could everyone put up or not confront her for so long? Was she that much of a bully? I mean, outside of legal action, I don't know. I mean, I think the first step was accepting the Facebook request. You were out. You were scot-free. You could escape. You could have just blocked her posts or something.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.